Welcome to the Industrial IoT Spotlight, your number one spot for insight from industrial IoT thought leaders who are transforming businesses today. With your host, Erik Walenza.
Welcome back to the Industrial IoT Spotlight podcast. I'm your host, Erik Walenza, CEO of IoT One, the consultancy that helps companies create value from data to accelerate growth. And our guest today is Paul McCarthy, founder and CEO of Snapfix. Snapfix is the simplest maintenance platform on the planet, making maintenance easier with a streamlined system of photos and traffic lights that everyone can use. In this talk, we discussed why the building management industry has been a laggard in technology adoption, despite being among the largest sectors in the economy in terms of both assets and employment. We also explored the application of consumer app best practices for building enterprise solutions that can be used by frontline staff with little or no training. If you find these conversations valuable, please leave us a comment and a 5-star review. And if you'd like to share your company's story or recommend a speaker, you can email us at team@iotone.com. Finally, if you have an IoT research, strategy, or innovation initiative that you'd like to discuss, please email me directly at erik.walenza@iotone.com. Thank you.
Paul, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Erik. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. This is an area that we are really looking forward to getting into deeper over at IoT One. And Paul, before we jump into your story, I've invited one of our new partners at IoT One, Darwin Wang, to join the conversation. So Darwin, let me ask you to give a quick introduction to yourself before we hand over to Paul.
Sure. Hey, Paul. Hey, everyone. I am Darwin. I have recently just joined Erik as the partner to lead the PropTech practice for IoT One. And previously, as of end of April, I was the chief of staff for the technology advisory team at JL, and our team mostly covered EMEA and APAC. And previously to that, I was the global desk and head of strategy for a design construction firm. So that's going to be an experience. I think it'll be pretty interesting to hear what Snapfix is doing. So yeah, I am a huge evangelist and proponent of the use of technology in the real estate sector. So I'm excited to join Erik and excited to participate in this discussion.
Great. Thanks, Darwin. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Darwin.
Okay, Paul, we're going to dig into the business of Snapfix. But before we go there, I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. And talking to a founder, it's always really interesting to understand why you chose this problem of all the different problems you could have devoted this portion of your life to solving. So can you give us a little bit of a walkthrough of the founding of the company?
Sure thing, Erik. So I grew up on a farm. I was one of 12 kids, believe it or not. So we used to joke that we had a soccer team and a substitute when we were always growing up. And growing up on a farm taught me very, very early on the importance of teamwork and not wasting time. We always had a huge amount of work to do, and we were always looking for innovative ways to do stuff faster so we could get done quicker. I studied computer science then in University College Cork, and I spent the next 15 years traveling the world. I spent 10 years in New York. I spent some time in Germany, in Mexico City. I spent a year in Australia working on a lot of very, very exciting IT projects. In parallel with all of that, which grew out of the farming business, I've always been involved with property management, property development with my family. And about 6 years ago, I was really getting frustrated as I was managing a number of residential and commercial buildings. A lot of requests were coming in from tenants, and I was making requests of contractors. And there was a lot of emails, Post-it notes, WhatsApps, taps on the shoulder. Everything was just going on, and everything just seemed to be very, very disorganized and inefficient. I looked to the market to see if there was a simple solution out there for this. And the common denominator I saw with both sides of it, from the tenants to the contractors, was everyone was using WhatsApp. Now, WhatsApp is the most amazing platform in the world for chat, but it wasn't fit for purpose for managing tasks, and in particularly in the built environment. So I set about a mission to create the simplest facilities and maintenance platform on the planet using all the features and wonderful look and feel and experience of WhatsApp and Instagram and social media type apps, and bring that into the built environment.
Yeah, and I love on your LinkedIn profile, you have almost a little poem here, which is everyone can take a photo. A photo speaks 1,000 words. A photo speaks every language, and everyone understands the simplicity of traffic lights, right? So it's kind of written almost as a poem on your LinkedIn profile, but it makes a great deal of sense the way you've just explained the logic behind the solution. I mean, I guess you set up the business in 2019, and WhatsApp, I'm forgetting exactly when it was established, but I feel like it was probably in the market for almost a decade by then. Why do you think this solution hadn't been created and wasn't already on the market when you had your personal kind of eureka moment or search for a solution?
Yeah, definitely well before 2019, WhatsApp was being quite successful, and I was tracking the data on it. And I think, now I might be wrong about the exact numbers, I think back around 2018, 2019, it was transacting about 60 billion messages per day. And I think now, obviously, it's probably 100 plus billion messages per day. So the world had started to shift to communicating using photos and messaging. So I really, really look to that insight for the solution for the future. As an industry in particular, and having been in software development for over 25 years, I saw that every system I ever worked on was forms-based. It was quite rigid. They were quite complex, and they didn't very often have the end user experience at the fore of the design. And I decided to put that at the fore of the design for Snapfix. I put a lot of research and a lot of time into studying how Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive worked on the iPod and the iPhone. And I really took on board some of their key messages about relentlessly eliminating everything that's not absolutely essential and just keep iterating through that. And the analogy I normally give to people is Microsoft Word, wonderful product, no question about it. We all pay for 100% of it. We use 1% of it. And at Snapfix, we just want to work on the 1% that all of our customers will use.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating industry because it is, I don't know if it's the largest industry. If it's not the largest, it must be the largest, among the top three industries globally. And if you think about just asset value, right? I mean, real estate must be number one. But when it comes to technology adoption, I mean, you think huge, very expensive assets that are very costly to maintain. They must be a huge appetite for new technology to help with the efficiency. But then when you actually look at, adoption, I mean, it always seems like it's quite a painful process to get a new technology into the real estate industry. What do you think it is about the industry that makes it, as you said, like a lot of technology is developed maybe without the user in mind, a lot of laptop solutions, despite the fact that you have people constantly traveling around to sites. And I think in a lot of cases, just failure to adopt, which might be, coming back to the root cause of the solution, a failure to build solutions that the actual users in the industry can adopt. What do you think is the root cause of the challenge of getting this industry to digitalize?
I think there's a couple of ways of looking at that. I definitely have a strong view that the industry has been poorly served with, not to be too blunt about it, just terrible software. It weighs 15 ton to try to roll out a piece of software in a construction or engineering company. You have to hire people to roll it out. You have to hire people to administer it. And it just turns into this ballooning cost all of the time. In parallel with that, obviously, with the advent of smartphones and apps, the expectation, I think, that the world is moving very, very quickly to is towards simplicity. We all are very emotionally attached to our WhatsApp and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and these types of solutions. And it's bringing both of those together, bring brilliant design that's well proven in the consumer space and bring that into the business space, but bring it in with diligence and with beauty and with emotion, with just brilliant design. And again, with a relentless focus on eliminating everything that's not absolutely necessary. I think those are key parts to it. I think the audience that we meet all of the time now, we started out working with hotels. And hotels demand high quality, absolutely beautiful buildings. They operate 24/7, so it was a great place to stress test Snapfix. And they have a large audience of multilingual teams. And some of the most emotional feedback we've received from our customers would be from members of the team who may not speak English or whatever as their first language, and they can now communicate super effectively with the maintenance teams and the management teams and everybody else using the power of photos.
So, Paul, I think that really took a lot of courage for you to decide to adopt this mobile first strategy right when you started this company, because quite honestly, right, for like what you're saying too, for someone like you who was traditionally a B2B software engineer, and also especially for the real estate industry, a lot of entrepreneurs would be tempted to build a product that's really for the desktop. So the fact that you've chose this mobile first strategy from the get-go, it took a lot of courage. So wanted to understand a little bit more of how you've done your user research initially, and how did you validate the product?
Great question, Darwin. Well, at the very, very early days, I decided that if I have this problem, and it was a big problem for me, I was managing multiple different types of buildings in different locations, and I had a small team, geographically dispersed. And I said, I'm not the only person with that kind of problem. So when I built the prototype initially, I showed it to a lot of construction, engineering, facilities management, service providing companies, and hotels. And it was the hotels that really their eyes just popped open. And we decided then, when we kicked off Snapfix formally, to double down on hospitality. Now, when we started in September 19, we got off to a really, really flying start. Hotels were really, really liking it, spreading the word, right up until the middle of March 2020, when every single hotel in the world shut down. So I got to tell you, I cried, on that day, and then dusted myself off the next morning. We had always designed Snapfix for every type of building, every type of infrastructure, and every type of equipment. But we had decided to focus on hotels. So on March 16th, or whatever date that exactly was, we went wide and started attracting office buildings, residential apartment buildings, factories, retail stores, even mines in Africa. It was a great proving ground. I mean, there was a lot of poor fortune, obviously, with COVID. But the fortune for us as a company was it proved to us that customers all over the world, and we're now on 5 continents, that they would see Snapfix, understand it, trial it, and pay for it. And that was very, very important for us to prove that very, very early on.
Well, let's get into the solution. We've already described a little bit of the philosophy around it. But then if we look at, let's say, the jobs to be done, you have on your website, you have work orders, planned maintenance, asset management, and fire safety seem to be the big topics. Can you walk us through the scope of the product, and then how is it used, and how is it different from a traditional software that somebody might be using in the industry historically?
Sure. So key for us is that it has to be simple to download, simple to register, and simple to get up and running. So that's why the comparison with WhatsApp and Instagram is very, very relevant. So we usually start with a customer who identifies Snapfix as a possible solution. They download it, and then they start walking around their building, and they start snapping. They just start taking loads and loads of photos. They're all classified in the red traffic light section. And then they start getting a feel for, okay, a number of these are priority ones. So with a single tap, they can prioritize the ones that they want done right away. They can share it with members of their team in Snapfix. Super simple to add additional users, either by email or their phone number. And then they progress them to green. And after a very, very short, sometimes number of minutes, sometimes hours, they start seeing all of the items moving in Snapfix. It's like this living being of, you're seeing a lot of my issues. Oh, they've just disappeared. They've gone to green. It's a continuous effort, of course. We like to inform our clients that you're using Snapfix with your team. You can leverage the eyes and ears of everybody in your building at all times. And that's very, very powerful. So, for example, you could have somebody on the 6th floor, they spot something, they just take a Snapfix, they keep walking, they walk away, they keep working, doing whatever they're doing. That is now logged with a single click. Of course, you can use your voice as well. You can say into Snapfix, leaking tap in room 14, and it'll create a work order from your voice. That's where people typically start. We just started with a recent Hilton hotel, and within 10 days, they had about 400 tasks in green. So it just proved that their Their audience gravitated to Snapfix very, very quickly, and they got it. They got it instantaneously. Step 2 then would be around planned maintenance. So obviously people have to do fire safety checks on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. And that's as simple as taking a Snapfix and scheduling it for the period that's required. And that also comes with a checklist feature where you can associate the checklist items with electronic smart tags. So when you're doing your fire walk, you just walk around the building at a pretty good pace with your phone out, and you just touch your phone on these little electronic tags on each fire door. And it shows by the end of it that Paul McCarthy completed 100% of the firewalk at that point in time. Then people very, very quickly, just like WhatsApp, they gravitate to other uses of Snapfix. So if you think of, WhatsApp is always a series of groups and a series of users for a particular purpose. It's the exact same thing with Snapfix. So we would have customers increasing the usage from, guest requests or tenant requests. So they get logged in a particular folder. Lost and found is the surprise one for us in hotels. Didn't even think about it in day one. And next thing we started seeing all of these lost and found groups appearing where a member of staff finds something in the hotel, they just Snapfix it, it sits there. And then if the guest asks any other member of staff anywhere in the hotel, have you found my watch or my phone or whatever, they can just look up Snapfix and see if it's there in red. When they identify the guest, it goes to yellow. And when it's given back and returned, it's in green. So it's the traffic light system lends itself to any type of task management.
Okay, yeah, I love this kind of concept of framing a industrial solution around the simplicity and kind of the user experience of WhatsApp. I'm surprised more people don't do this, actually. I mean, Darwin, I know you've spent a lot of time looking at solutions in the industry. Have you seen other solutions that you would look at as kind of applying consumer UX best practices in the real estate sector?
Yeah, so there are a few, but ones that are so beautifully designed as Snapfix, it's a rarity. And I do see that with Snapfix, you guys are doing a lot of things that really address this pain point for hotel operators. But I'm wondering, Paul, with a increasing trend for, especially when you're entering offices and retail asset types, right? With these asset types, we're seeing an increasing adoption of integrated CMMS systems. So I'm just wondering, are you guys being able to plug into those systems or have plans to in the future?
We're already integrated to a number of them. We've got a number of clients who have these. Again, I call them the 16-ton CMMS systems. They're real heavy systems. And very often the smartphone experience isn't the best. And we have a lot of customers that want to use Snapfix out on the floors, but they do want the data captured back into their corporate CMMS. The solution was architected from day one using APIs, so we're unbelievably integration friendly, which is great for integrating into existing systems, and that can be bi-directional. And as well as that, integrating into smart devices. So a smart device, for example, a unit that detects if an emergency exit door is open for longer than 45 seconds or whatever, can ping a message to Snapfix. Instead of sending an email or a text to somebody, it actually creates a work order in Snapfix, meaning that somebody has the responsibility now to take action. So we only really want to get a ping from smart devices when an engineer or somebody needs to work on something.
Okay, that's interesting. We were actually just brainstorming or discussing some of the challenges with some property developers here in Shanghai. And one of the challenges that came up was just the proliferation of user interfaces, right? So if you want to have a leak detection sensor, you want to have an air quality monitoring sensor, you want to have you have these different IoT devices that are collecting data and then sending you indications of operations. And then each of these, will have its own application and its own UX, and you then have to kind of manage this, right? Which adds a lot of complexity. So it sounds like you're starting to integrate those in. What does that process look like today? Is it a negotiated process? Do most of these have APIs where you're just able to cut into the data stream, or do you then have to have some type of relationship with the solution providers in order to be able to integrate them into the Snapfix and alerts around the data coming off of these devices?
With most of the systems we've integrated today, they have pretty well established APIs. A recent one comes to mind, a building management system that monitors the temperature in different zones of a building. And when a tolerance is exceeded, it pings a message into Snapfix. It automatically creates a work order, and the facilities manager knows he or she has to check on something. All of the detailed data and analytics is still in the BMS, or it's still in the software for that smart device. But it's just a ping to create a work order with a full audit trail and accountability that somebody needs to address it is where we come in. It also avoids having to have 15 apps on your phone, one for each device. You just really want to know the exception condition when an alert goes off or an emergency case has been raised. And keeping it all in one simple interface is hugely valuable to our customers.
Yeah, I guess languages are going to be a big issue here as well. I mean, if you're talking about the US, it's probably English and Spanish, but you mentioned that you're on 5 continents, so you're getting into a lot of different regions. And I think one of the challenges in real estate is that each region they vary dramatically in terms of not just the languages that are spoken, but also regulations. If you're talking about fire safety, education levels of maybe on-site staff. If you're talking about Singapore versus Vietnam is kind of two Southeast Asian countries. What does localization look like for a solution like Snapfix? Do you find that the same solution can basically work with just some kind of simple translations of the UX, or do you have to actually do any significant amount of localization under the hood in order to make this a global solution?
As you can imagine, when you think about it, we have very, very little language in Snapfix. We allow people to create groups, and they can obviously use any language. They can create tags, which could be room locations within a building or different assets or asset categories, and all of those can be entered into any language. Obviously, the universal symbol or the universal language is the photo. So a lot of the activity is already in the photo. The voice feature I mentioned earlier allows you to say leaking tap in room 14, and it'll create a work order in Snapfix. Our next step for that is transcription, which we've got already working, and it's in QA. So it'll include the text in the task and then translation. And we're using third-party services for all of that. So we're keeping it super, super simple, super intuitive, but also super configurable so that people can use any language they wish.
Okay. And then when it comes to under the hood and stuff like fire safety, users just configure it to their requirements. There's no necessity to put in the local regulations.
Correct. We don't provide any data. So we provide the template. So it's, you have a group called fire safety checks. Your tasks are your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterlies. Your checklist of activities within each check will be what will be local to the jurisdiction. And then everything gets moved from red to yellow to green. So there's a consistency around it.
So I think the topic that we just raised right now in terms of the differences of the users and how they behave, I'd like to know a little bit more is that, when we're talking about adoption, ease of use is one thing, but having the incentive to use is another, right? And most of the time, in my experience working with other building management type of solutions for the commercial space, is that the decision maker, probably the facility manager, is completely able to buy into what we're trying to do here. But the ground level staff, the electrical engineer, the carpenter that might need to come fix something up, they might not be willing or able to use technology in places like what we're saying in Vietnam per se, for example. How do you give guidance to your customers to build best practices to get people excited to really use this product?
Really, really, really good question. Very often the facilities manager is not in support of any technology when we meet them first, because they have seen such horror shows. We've actually rolled out to a really, really large property management company who had stopped looking at solutions because they were all so horrible and complex. And then somebody said, well, you should look at Snapfix. And now we're managing their entire property portfolio with pretty much zero to minimal training of any staff. I think not forcing people down one avenue of use is really, really important. We're seeing a growing use of our QR code, for example. So you can just put a QR code around your property, and somebody points their smartphone at the QR code and they create a task into your Snapfix. That's super simple. Everybody can use their camera. Everybody can scan a QR code. Allowing some processes stay the way they are for the moment has also worked for us in hospitality, for example. In certain hotels, the housekeeping staff, as an example, aren't permitted to have phones on them. So the process between the housekeepers and the supervisors stays exactly the same. And it's the supervisors use the solution. And in relation to your example of a carpenter or an external contractor, we also obviously have a share feature within Snapfix where you can generate a PDF or an Excel of a particular task or number of tasks and just email them out or WhatsApp it out to the person if they're not on the Snapfix platform. So we want to make it super easy for anyone to use it in a multiple number of ways. Our long-term vision is for Snapfix to be a platform. So if you want to use Slack and somebody else wants to use email and somebody else wants to use WhatsApp, you can all integrate in and collaborate using the Snapfix platform. That's a bit out there, but we're working toward it every month.
Okay, interesting. So at some point in the not too distant future, you'll have an integration with these other communication apps. So maybe you can share information and then potentially also complete an order through those apps if you're working with people who have WhatsApp, for example, but not Snapfix. Is that the goal here?
Correct. The end game here, one of the end games for Snapfix is to be the global platform for getting things done. So it's the progress from red to yellow to green, irrespective of the user interface.
So I've got to ask, because I'm sitting here in Shanghai, what does the Chinese market look for you? Because it sounds on the one hand that this would be a perfect solution for the Chinese market. On the other hand, China is notoriously a challenging market for, let's say, European and American software to enter into. Do you have a foothill here? And what does the market look like?
We do not yet. As I mentioned earlier, the most important priority for us as an early stage company is to get to product market fit. And that's really, really around focus. So we've decided to put 75% of our focus on the hospitality sector for the reason I mentioned. It's a great stress testing ground, multilingual teams, and they demand highest quality. And our focus is on UK and Ireland and the US as well. So that's where we're planning to get to product market fit and then expand globally. We do have customers coming in from all over the world. We do not have any in China. We have a lot of people kicking the tires in China, but paid customers not yet. But that will be part of our plans in the future.
Yeah, got you. Well, and then maybe a follow-up there would be how you're selling this, right? Because this is a solution. I mean, I'm looking at your pricing page. It's very transparent, which is also a breath of fresh air in the industry, right? That you basically have the pricing spelled out as free trial, 7 days, $9.99 per user per month, the $999 per year for unlimited, and then a custom solution. So you have very transparent pricing. And I could imagine then that your adoption could come anywhere from just one manager having 3 employees or 3 team members and saying, hey, let's use this to coordinate, all the way up to a Hilton saying we've got 5,000 properties around the world and we want to standardize, or a JLL for that matter saying we're managing properties for 5,000 companies and we want to standardize our support of those companies. What have you found to be effective so far? Does it tend to be more bottom up and then spreading through the organization, or are you going more top down of talking to chains and then aiming to have more of a rollout across their portfolio?
90% of it is bottom up. And again, it's more to do with the stage of growth of our company. A lot of those top down conversations can be very time consuming, can be quite expensive, can be quite laborious. We prefer, you gave the example of the Hilton there, we prefer, a couple of dozen Hiltons to start using it and really, really start a buzz going and people get excited about it. And then when we have those top-down conversations, we've got a body of amazing customers that we can point to. We are in some top-down conversations, including with Skanska in the US. Some of their innovation teams, for example, they see just a giant leap between the existing complex systems with 50,000 features that most people don't even use anyway, to a relentless focus on what's really, really important with the likes of Snapfix. So there's a few of those top-down conversations going on, but I just have to manage those carefully. Again, it's a resource constraint issue just for the moment.
With your product, I could see that with all the tech stack you have, I think I could see it being used in the construction phase as well. Have you guys ever thought of providing these to clients when they're in the handover stage, or even for project management companies that are on construction sites and going through, let's say, a interim or some type of inspection on the construction site?
Yes, and I did mention Skanska there. In my view, there's two sides to the construction opportunity. One is recording the as-built progress. So you're building a partition wall or something like that. You photograph it on a Monday. You put the insulation in on a Tuesday. You put the wiring in. You put on a Wednesday. The plumbing goes in on a Thursday. So you're photographing it continuously, the as-built progress, which is very, very important for building control and compliance. That's one side of it. And then at the very end of the construction stage, there is the punch list / snagging. In Europe, they call it snagging phase, where you're just photographing an enormous volume of little things that need to be fixed. And that's actually how a lot of our new build hotels come on board. They come on at the tail end of the construction phase and then continue it into the maintenance of the hotel itself.
Yeah, I'm just putting myself back 10 years ago when I was a project director on construction projects, and we used just to take photos with our phones, and then go back to our computers and put these photos on Excel sheets and putting them next to floor plans. It was a nightmare. Had we had something like this, it would have been able to make my life a lot better 10 years ago.
And I agree with you 100%. We have a lovely engineering company customer. They put in conveyor systems into factories and mines and places like that. And they walk around the conveyor systems, or they did walk around the conveyor systems, taking photos for about half a day, and then go back to the office for a day and a half, cutting and pasting it into some report. And now that latter day and a half doesn't exist anymore. They just take all the photos in Snapfix, and it can create PDFs, reports, whatever they want out of it instantaneously.
Paul, this might be maybe a bridge too far for Snapfix, but when I think about the Chinese version of WhatsApp, WeChat, one of the real breakthrough innovations there has been the e-commerce module. So the ability to just dramatically simplify the act of buying something. And I know this is much more complex in a B2B setting, but certainly there's financial transactions recorded to or related to some of these events, right? So the need to hire an agency, the need to procure materials, spare parts, etc. To what extent are you interacting with financial systems, whether it's making a direct procurement or logging a cost into an SAP system? How does that interaction with financial systems work today?
We've taken the first step with it, and it's around tracking the time and the cost of a particular task. And obviously that can roll up to a project and all the rest of it, and that can integrate into a financial system. That side of it is fine. Looking at what you were mentioning at the outset of the question, where we've got a project going on at the moment. I like to use the term machine learning rather than AI. It's just my preference, where when we see a photograph of something, you've got a photograph of a light switch. Well, there's an instant opportunity there to purchase that from a certain supplier or whatever. But at this point in time, I think we'll be using third-party services for that. But using or getting more capability out of each photo is a big part of our future as well.
Well, yeah, in this topic of machine learning or maybe generative AI, especially, the image recognition could be interesting, right? If you could kind of systematically record those. I know that you do have a reporting feature, but I guess reporting typically works well when you have highly structured data, and then it kind of breaks down when you have, less structured data, which images would certainly fall into. But if you're able to use a generative AI system to recognize and say, okay, this over our set of properties, we've had 6,000 instances of X. Based on photo evidence, that could be quite a powerful addition to traditional reporting. Are you looking into this topic, or do you see promise in generative AI for interpreting photos and converting them into structured data?
We have it. We believe it or not, we have it already. We haven't released it to our customers just yet. Two sides to it. I mentioned earlier leaking tap in room 14. If you say that with your voice, we can present a photo of a tap. We've actually held back on that for the moment because prompting people with images and the image doesn't physically exist in their building was just a step too far. So we've stepped back from that. The more advantageous side of it is when you take a photo of that leaking tap, and we have seen in your database, in your private and secure database, we've seen that tap before. We can auto tag it instantaneously, basically taking clicks away from you. So the previous 15 times you photographed that tap, you shared it with Terry, your electrician, you tagged it to plumbing, and that's an evolving process based on volume of data. And we'll start by suggesting those tags to our customers, and then eventually we'll remove the suggestion and just auto tag. So yeah, we're knee deep in that research at the moment.
Yeah, cool. Yep.
Being able to share a photo of what something is supposed to look like, I'm sure it'll be a blessing to a lot of your hotel customers, especially the front desk, right? When the hotel's front desk is processing checkout for a customer or a visitor, and then discover that the room there's broken TV or broken glass, being able to just go on Snapfix and pull out photos of what it's supposed to look like. I'm sure that's a blessing to front desk trying to explain these things to clients.
It is. So we would have a lot of companies, not only hotels, but also office fit out and retail stores. They will create a group in Snapfix called Brand Standards, and they will photograph all of the various parts of the building or a particular room. And if there's new staff and they want to know how to dress the bed or how to leave the sink area, they're so precise as to where they want every single item left. And photo-based training is very, very effective there as well. On the flip side, we do have quite a number of hotels as well who photograph every room after it's been cleaned, so that if there is a complaint, let's say when the next guest moves in and says the TV was broken or whatever, well, it wasn't broken when we left it 45 minutes ago or whatever, you know what I mean? Or something is no longer in the room that may have, accidentally or intentionally fallen into somebody's suitcase, that kind of thing. So you can get a very, very quick visual inventory or condition survey very, very simply as well.
Yeah, I mean, because of the simplicity and then your plans to integrate into the broadly used communication apps in the future, do you see potential to allow the users, I guess, whether it's a hotel guest, maybe a frequent guest of a hotel chain, or I run a business and I rent an office, and occasionally I want to complain to building management around the toilets, but it's not that convenient, right, to kind of track down somebody. So it would be certainly more convenient if I could just snap a picture and then send that to the landlord. Do you see room to provide access to certain functionality to the tenants or the users of a building?
Yes. I mentioned Cure before. So Cure for us is the first step on that road to allow any guest in any room to report something. And we would have customers who would have these on posters or stickers around the property, around the room, and also displaying the QR code in their audio-visual system in the case of a hotel. Down the line, I do have a design in process where your GPS location, so you're taking a photo right now of something, your GPS location will prompt you to say, are you in this building or that building? Or maybe if you're in an office building, there's multiple floors, and you can communicate with the building manager that way. But definitely, I have a firm and strong view that every building in the world should have a QR code to allow any visitor to communicate with the building manager. Because basically what we're doing is you're expanding and you're leveraging the eyes and ears of everybody, all your staff, all your visitors in a building to help you make your building as good as it could be at all times. And some fire safety officers and consultants that I meet with also suggest that when you scan that QR code, in addition to allowing you to communicate with the building manager, but the building manager should communicate some critical information to you. This building is fire compliant and the occupancy of this building is 400 people, and you can make an informed decision whether you want to enter the building or not. So there's a little bit of a two-way street there.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, a lot of hotels, for example, there might be 20 guests going through the self-service gym before any employee enters, right? And so you want ideally guest number one to identify something's broken before the next 19 come and have that problem. So this idea of having all the eyes on the problem is a great concept. So it sounds like you've covered a lot of ground in the past, the past 4 or so years now. I know you raised around last year. I imagine it sounds like you have already an ambitious product development roadmap, also an expansion roadmap. What is it that's most exciting to you about the future? Are there particular new developments that you're going to be launching later this year? Is it more about market traction and new market entry now? What's keeping you busy or up at night?
I've never been more excited about Snapfix today than any other day in the past. Well, I think the thing that keeps me most excited is the future of the smartphone. Today, as an example, we capture a photo and a GPS location. That's all fantastic. But in a number of years' time, given the additional devices within our phones, we'll be capturing the air quality, we'll be capturing the temperature, we'll be capturing the pollen count. And all of these different sensors within our phones will provide additional data for our customers, and we will be able to offer 10x and more value based on the analytics of that data. Because it could come to pass, of course, that when the temperature reaches 85 degrees and something, then this piece of equipment fails. Well, you don't get that today on a photo and a GPS. You get that from the additional data points. We're very, very focused on trying to help a lot of buildings go green and be the best they can be and be the most efficient they can be at all times. And all of that leads into it. But the power of the smartphone, this thing that everyone's walking around with in their hands, this supercomputer, is the most exciting thing because, again, people plus smartphone equals smart building. And with no wiring, nothing new to install, but let's leverage these supercomputers in all these people going around buildings. And if the solution is simple, we can leverage all of that power to create smart buildings.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's very interesting. I mean, I think a lot about, I'm probably a little bit too old school, actually, still in my thinking. I'm always thinking about sensors now embedded in buildings and so forth. But you're right. The smartphone is going to become more and more kind of an operational sensor for our lived environment. And we all have to be thinking about how to integrate that into our solutions.
Just imagine the AR glasses that are coming in, the new Apple glasses, right?
Yes.
It's going to even change the world even more.
We haven't even talked about that. The future of AR and VR will just change everything yet again. So it'll be absolutely phenomenal. You'll be able to see floor plans. You'll be able to see behind the fabric of the building into the structure of it. It just, 1000x expands the amount of data we can be looking at.
So that's been a notoriously hard one to forecast. And I mean, I guess as a startup, you do have to be careful with your capital. Is augmented reality glasses on service personnel would be just fantastic tools. It's just a question of when that tool is going to reach a price point and kind of a reliability level and in a comfort level that it's widely used. Do you have any thought process on when that might be, or are you just going to be kind of monitoring the market year after year and trying to be ready when it reaches that level of maturity?
Obviously, Apple has just come out with their headset there recently, or their ski goggle view of it. We're just going to watch that space. I think just like with integration to any other systems, when an engineer needs to capture something or record the progress of something or complete something, we'd like to be that system of record for that red, yellow, green progress. We won't be getting into the AR, VR space anytime soon. There's expert companies out there who are fantastic at that. But integration into them, all day long.
Yeah, exactly. Great. Well, Paul, fascinating company that you're building. And I feel like we have a pretty good understanding now. Is there anything important that we missed?
We're just excited to keep simplifying it. I use the percentage. I say 78%. We're 78% there towards simplicity. So every single month we try to simplify Snapfix even more. And I've instructed our product manager to remove 10% of Snapfix every year. So we don't carry old technology or unused technology forward. We put in some features during the COVID period. They're all coming out now. That kind of thing. So we have an obsessive focus about staying super lean, getting as close as possible to your camera roll, to the user experience of WhatsApp and Instagram and the like. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, great. Well, love that philosophy of simplicity, Paul. And thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
And thank you both. Thank you, Erik. Thank you, Darwin. Really, really enjoyed that conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Industrial IoT Spotlight. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at IoT One HQ and to check out our database of case studies on IoT1.com. If you have unique insight or a project deployment story to share, we'd love to feature you on a future edition. Write us at erik.walenza@IoT1.com.